Okay, Crawford, I can do the roll call. Is that, on the screen, does it say the recording?
It says this meeting is being recorded by host or participant.
And can someone just touch it and like take it off the screen?
Oh, that's, they got it.
Oh, there we go. Okay,
Okay,
all right.
so would you like me to do roll call to officially start the
Okay.
meeting since we've established? quorum?
Yes, why don't you start with that? Go
Okay,
ahead.
okay, so Crawford,
Good morning. I'm Crawford Carpenter, and I've been a member for 3 years, and I'm a resident of Central County. Brenda, you're on.
Good morning, I'm Brenda Lee. I'm a resident of West County, and this is my third meeting, I believe.
Good. Latanya.
Latanya Thompson. I am a resident of Contra Costa, and this is my first year.
Good morning, everyone. Ozzy Carter. This is my third year. I'm in this 5th district, East County.
Okay.
I'm happy to be here this morning.
My name is Rena Moore. My first year from East County.
Scott
Parsons, here with the cab, right? And resident of Moraga, Central County.
Okay. Evan.
Evan Decker, West County. I live in Berkeley, but I work at Contra Costa College. And I've been here 3 years.
Okay, and since there's a small group, why don't we go to those that are here with us? Oh, let's start with staff. Would you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, good morning, everyone. Trace Guillory here with Office of Reentry and Justice.
Michael Pitts with Health Right 360 Reentry Network.
And thank you. And since again, it's a small group, why don't we start with Jill? Would you introduce yourself, please?
Sure, Jill Ray with Supervisor Anderson's office.
And what is it, Dina Cole?
Good morning. My name is Dina Cole Tangent. I am with Community Villages.
Good morning,
And
everyone.
Charles.
Yes, I'm Charles Brown. I'm a business services representative with the Workforce Development Board of Contra Costa County. Thank you.
and I am Monique Tate with the Office of Reentry and Justice.
All right, thank you. Well, good morning to all. And for those of you that are just joining us here, we're the Community Advisory Board. We are known as CAB. We were established by CCP, which is the Community Corrections Partnership. Prior to moving to announcements, which is the next item on our agenda here, I'd like to set the table. This is kind of new for us for the decorum and for how we're going to react in this venue. To begin, persons who wish to address the Community Advisory Board during public comment on matters within our jurisdiction that are not on the agenda or wish to comment with respect to an item on the agenda may comment in person, via Zoom, or via call-in. Those participating in person should make public comment when called upon. Now, this is going to be interesting since you're behind us, so we'll get to you if you have something, so don't worry, we'll figure it out. And those of you that are participating via Zoom should indicate that they wish to speak by raising their hand with the hand feature on Zoom. And Monique, if you'd be kind enough to point that out to me, I think I can see it on the screen, but to make sure we're in sync. And for those that are calling, they should indicate that they wish to speak by pushing *9 and then to raise your hand and *6 to unmute on the phone. As a courtesy to others, all public comments should be limited to 2 minutes per speaker. And then for any assistance that you might need, with remote access, there's a number that you can call, which is 925. It's listed up on the screen, 313-4087. Before we begin, let's pause a moment and review the purpose of CAB. That purpose is to advise CCP by assessing the implementation of the county reentry strategic plan. Some, but not all of our responsibilities are advising CCP on engagement strategies, offering recommendations for ongoing realignment planning, and advising county agencies regarding programs for implementation in our county. Announcements. First, CAB members. Are there any announcements from our CAB members? None. Oh, yes, let's.
Yes, good morning. I'd like to make an announcement this morning, and this is specifically from Alcohol and Other Drugs Advisory Board, for which I am also serve on that board. We're in the process of nominating individuals. We have an award that's given yearly called People Who Make a Difference Award. And we're currently accepting nominations. And I have flyers, I have nomination forms, and I also have a letter. And I'll just kind of breeze through what this encompasses and what we're trying to do and how many we have, the categories that we do have. We're seeking the nominations. This is an annual event, and we encourage all of our community partners who are working with persons or groups who make a difference as far as helping curb alcohol and other drug problems in Contra Costa County. But it's not limited to just substances. We have 6 award categories: volunteer individual, volunteer group, non-volunteer individual, non-volunteer group, youth leadership individual, and youth leadership group. So forms are also downloadable. There's a letter here, an explanation. I also have a flyer and the announcement, as well as the application. Is anyone that might be interested?
Are there any other announcements first from CAB members? All right, then moving to announcements from staff. Patrice? Here, why don't I just scoot over?
Hi, everyone. ORJ is really excited to share and announce that we have concluded our RFQ process to bring on an agency that will handle the project management and conducting a needs assessment for our soon-to-be launched Restorative Justice Initiative. You all may remember that the probation department was allocated $2 million of one-time funds to implement a community-based restorative justice project. So over the course of time, we've had difficulty in trying to hire a project coordinator. And so thus we just decided we'll just put something out to RFQ. So we convened a review panel. We received 3 submissions, and the review panel has recommended RAIN Community Development and Bright Star Research Group, who will work jointly to provide the project management aspect as well as conducting a needs assessment. There will be a stakeholder engagement element, a strong stakeholder engagement element to this project. And I know that many CAB members, both current as well as previous CAB members, have expressed interest in wanting to be a part of that. So please note that your names have been shared with them. The next steps will be to kind of work through administratively some of the elements of their work plan to make sure everything is ready to go. We'll then enter into contract with them and have this thing launched hopefully by July 1. So we're really, really excited about it. I'll certainly also make a point to schedule some time for a future CAB meeting where they can come and present and give you sort of an overview of the work plan and how they plan to roll this out in the next 2 years. This will be a 2-year-long project. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Patrice. Are there any other announcements for staff? All right, let's move then to announcements from the public at large. Are there any announcements from the public at large? None being seen nor heard. Let's move now to the rest of our agenda. Item number 2. Is there any public comment on any item under the jurisdiction of the Community Advisory Board and currently not on this agenda? Again, public comment. Boy, this group's easy today. None being heard nor seen. Let's move to the next item. Item number 3 on our agenda. Item number 3 on our agenda is approval of our records of action from our March 9th meeting. Please go to attachment 1 and please see pages 4 through 6. We're going to give you this. Oh, this is great. We have a clock in front of us. You got 39 seconds to look through that. And then after that, because hopefully you've read this son of a gun, we're moving forward. Your 39 seconds are up. Is there a motion?
So I'll move that we approve the minutes from the meeting on March 9th for the CAB.
Is there a second?
I second that motion.
Discussion from the board first? Discussion from staff? Discussion from the public at large? Monique, would you be kind enough to call the vote?
Okay, let me just make a comment before I do the roll call. Justin is now in attendance. He's on the board. So when we did like the roll call announcements, he had not been present at the time. So I just wanted to make that comment publicly. So I will do the vote now. So Crawford,
Yes.
Ozzy,
Yes.
Evan,
Yes.
Brenda,
Yes.
Rena,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Latanya, and Justin.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries.
Thank you very much. Moving now then to the next item on the agenda. There's supposed to be a presentation for implicit bias. And prior to getting into that presentation, we've asked Ozzy to introduce our producers, our presenters, and to provide context and background in bringing this presentation to us. The floor is yours, Ozzy.
Thank you, Crawford. You know, it gives me great pleasure to actually bring forth this specific presentation. I'm thanking Ms. D. Nicole and Community Village and Ms. Tanya Jacobs for helping to facilitate this presentation. And I would like to give the background. When I first came to CAB 3 years ago, I was pursuing my 6th degree. And this particular degree was at UC Berkeley, a media studies major undergrad. And my last year, I had the opportunity of doing some things that were outside of my major. And it was in African-American studies, and we talked about race and technology and how implicit bias is embedded in our AI, artificial intelligence. And as a media studies major, one of my first research papers dealt with the implicit bias from our capitalistic these are my terminologies, capitalistic, hegemonic, misogynist environment that we currently live in. And, you know, when I was learning about AI and how the implicit biases were embedded in our Google and our other search engines, it kind of made me look inside of me at my implicit bias. And because of my background, being formerly incarcerated, still in recovery, substance abuse and alcohol, I've been clean and sober for quite some time. I always try to continue to work on myself because it's an inside job, and always being mindful of what I'm presenting when I'm in public. And my passion is to give back to my communities that I represent. So implicit bias was, I had a whole lot of them. You know, I came on board with a lot of them just from life in general, you know, with how I was raised, because, you know, we have biases in our media and all sorts of ways. You know, sometimes it's cultural, sometimes it's generational. And so looking inside myself, I decided, you know, I wanted to really bring this to the forefront in CAB, our Community Advisory Board, and the individuals that we have serving on the board, as well as those who are servicing and serving our communities that are really marginalized, those communities that we're advocating for, those communities who are involved in things that are really harmful. When we want people to come to the table understanding what implicit biases are, whether that word is used as far as cultural competency. There's a lot of other words that are used to describe, you know, things inherently of what we look as our biases. So that's the story of why I felt this was a necessary presentation, because I feel that we probably, as a board, we should look as to, we have Brown Act in place. I think implicit bias training would be beneficial to our board. I feel that implicit bias training is beneficial to the CBOs, because they not only serve, but they're here to support. And so that's my history. And it's taken me almost a year and a half to really find someone that would be willing, organizations that will be willing to come and to make a presentation and speak to the board to really help with the process of what my vision is, and hopefully that we can all, you know, come to the same conclusions, that this will be very beneficial for us as a board and for our community-based organizations moving forward.
Thank you. Well, without further comments, why don't we get into the presentation?
Hi, good morning, board, and thank you for having us here. My name is Tanya Jacobs. I'm the Executive Director for Community Villages. Before Dee Nicole go into the presentation, I just want to give y'all an acknowledgement and also just an introduction about who we are as an organization and the reason why we do the work that we do. I'll take a few minutes of your time. At Community Villages, we look into serving the underrepresented communities and also the marginalized areas out in Contra Costa County, which has been our primary focus. But Dee Nicole and myself, we primarily been doing this work over a large period of time, over about 22 years collectively. And we've been looking at communities from different aspects of systems of care. And so within Community Villages, we look at 4 different services that we like to offer into our community. And that goes from our food security program, which we're a partner with Contra Costa and Solano County Food Pantry, which we service our communities of all. Then we also have our unhoused or homeless outreach that we go out into encampments and we look at 2 communities to bring them into a desired sheltering community that they would like to be within and receive the adequate services such as mental health, substance abuse, physical needs, physical health. Then we also, lately we merged into our mental health services. Dee Nicole and myself and our team we're clinicians from Inform, as well as of different modalities that we like to focus on. And last but not least, we have our reentry services that we like to offer to our community. The implicit bias came upon us when we often really looked into the field that we've been working in over a period of time. And we started, and I'll just speak for myself, we started to notice our own biases as a provider in the way that we showed up. And then we started to surveying how that really impacts the way that we serve our community. First, we had to start assessing ourselves. And then we started looking at how our colleagues serve our communities as well. And then we start surveying our communities, our recipients along the way and seeing how they was being received from even the biases that we had noticed ourselves. So it has been a great focus from Dean Nicole's perspective to continue to share with others the dangers of implicit biases. And I'll let Dean Nicole go into her induction also, go into the presentation for today.
Thank you. Yes, my name is Dina Cole Tangent. And implicit bias and marginalization of vulnerable community members has honestly always been a passion of mine. It was really my driving force to become a social worker and to advocate for more equality amongst everybody, because I truly do believe that we all play a role in making our society better and our communities better. And we can't do that if we have things that are preventing us from helping each other and supporting each other, including our implicit bias. You can scroll to the next. Thank you. I didn't know if you wanted me to just share my screen and pull up the presentation, if that would be easier.
It's totally up to you. I can share, I can give you the ability to share. If you try, I can stop sharing now.
Okay, yeah, why don't we do that? And then
Okay,
I'll-
all right. No worries.
Okay. Okay. So, oh, it looks like you have a little bit different of a presentation. Might have pulled up the wrong one. Let's do an icebreaker right now, because I did see that on there and I do like that. So amongst ourselves, our small groups, let's just take 2 minutes and just talk about some of the things that we have experienced in our lives that we felt were biases coming from another member of the community. And for those of us that are on Zoom and alone, we can feel free, if we're comfortable, invite you to be able to even share anything in the chats of where you may have experienced some of that negative impact of implicit bias in your life.
Sharing in like small groups, or?
I don't know if we're talking to each other or,
Yeah, talking to each other.
oh, are we?
I think so.
So who goes first?
Chat?
Who wants to go first?
Are we gonna pair off? Like a pairing off?
Oh, should we pair off then?
Yeah, they've
Well,
already.
and if we'd like,
Okay, why don't you two, and Rena?
Yeah. So.
Okay. Can you?
Sharing.
I can't.
Oh,
no, then
Yeah.
I have to associate mine with.
Yeah, perception.
Other perceptions. Based on. All of the. Yes, return.
And they don't show a lot of respect. And I think that's developed, not in bias, I just underline.
Oh, yeah, I just need 15 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah. You're one of them. So that's one that I can on myself.
So I probably compensate for it by.
I don't have a natural predisposed.
So
Okay.
I appreciate everybody interacting and talking about this. So part of the reason we wanted to kind of be able to share some of that information is so that we can recognize how common this is, regardless of how we look, because we all have implicit biases. And the reason that is because our brains are going to rely on patterns in order to be able to function quicker. We rely on our autopilot and having routines and patterns in order to be able to function more efficiently throughout the day without having to consciously process information. So implicit bias can be the littlest things where if you're sitting in your car and you see somebody of a different race walking by, you might already have a pattern of belief in your head that you don't think about that might make you lean over and lock your car door. Something that we don't consciously think about, which is why they are very dangerous.
So, Dean Nicole, can I step in for just a second, please?
Absolutely.
So what I would suggest, since it's a public meeting, that maybe they would say it to just one person at a time, just say what their comments are, because it was really hard to see or hear. I would say it was just felt real garbled with people in groups discussing it. So I guess my suggestion would be is that if they have an example, they can raise their hand and speak publicly, because it was just a little hard for a public meeting to have that in that setting. I just wanted to mention that because I'm virtually in my office observing, so.
No, I appreciate that. And I do want to invite anybody who feels comfortable and safe enough to be able to share their experiences with the group to do so.
Yeah, do you want to start then, Rena? Because we talked, okay.
Well, I guess I've had issues with people with perceptions of me because I'm in reentry and because I had a history of substance abuse. So I've had to deal with that.
Anyone else or any group of two have any comments? Okay. Wait a minute, any
Rena.
comments? Oh, 1 second, any comments? Okay, any comments on the screen? Well, we got a mighty good group here, don't we? Wow.
And Miss Rena, I want to say congratulations in your journey for your sobriety and for your strength to be able to advocate for others, honestly, because I know due to many implicit biases that people often will judge individuals with your life experience differently. So an implicit bias is a judgment or bias based in a subtle cognitive process. A good example is I actually had an employer one time who I did not meet until the interview, who told me that she was very surprised by the color of my skin because she expected me to look like somebody else. Because of my name and the way it is spelled, she had an implicit bias on how I should look before she even met me. These are important things to discuss because things like a person's name and implicit bias on what you expect somebody to look like to come work for you can really have a ripple effect on an individual's life. And that's just one detail in a whole life. So the importance of the implicit bias training is we want to begin to recognize our implicit biases as well as the triggers of those biases so that we can interrupt the thought process and become aware of how we are behaving towards somebody and how that can be disruptive. And by disrupting that automatic process, we can start to develop more cultural humility and prevent negative impacts to other people. I use the example of a job. If somebody is being implicitly biased in their hiring without that recognition that they have this unconscious bias and expectation for who they will hire, you're losing out on a lot of great candidates. And you're preventing somebody who doesn't look the way you expect them to look from being able to support their family or struggling to make ends meet. Along with our interactions in everyday life outside of that. Implicit biases can affect education. It can affect access to all community resources. So it's very important to talk about it. I want to invite you, when you have a moment, to go to this website. It's a study that's being conducted by Harvard about implicit biases. And there are multiple subjects on different implicit biases to be able to kind of show us where we may be more implicitly biased than we believe. I took one on implicit bias for weight, and I was actually pretty shocked at my results. So I would like to invite you, when you have a chance, to do it and see, and maybe that'll help to show us all why it's important for us to know more about our own implicit biases. Any questions?
Yes, I have a question. What would the training what would a training look like for a group such as ours with 12 members?
So what I'm envisioning for a training is all participants to actually do at least one implicit bias test through Harvard, because I think that can begin to help people understand that we all have implicit bias and be more encouraged to engage in the training. And then we would talk about what we learned from that and different skills that we can use for when we do recognize our implicit biases, and also talking about de-escalation for when we may experience a situation where we have disrespected or made somebody feel uncomfortable and we're confronted because of our implicit biases. Because the point is to recognize them and recognize we're gonna have things happen and know how to be respectful and still de-escalate and talk to the individual that we may have offended.
So I have a quick comment. This is Monique. If you all in the room could identify yourself when you speak, because from the virtual side, the public, it's hard to identify. I know that that was Ozzy speaking, but if you can just state your name at the beginning of your comment so that the recording and the public knows who's speaking. Thank you.
Monique, I have a question, this is Tanya. I know that when you're speaking, the room, I can see the people in the room, but when you're not speaking, it goes to a black screen. Is that set up intentionally or is that by error?
So that's the way it's set up because I'm set up the computer for the training, which the CAB members are in. And then I'm in my office right next door. So that's, it's a technical thing as far as how we're doing virtual. Patrice, I don't know if you want to add more to that, but that's the best way I can explain it. But that's why they definitely should identify themselves as they're speaking.
Well, to be honest, and also Tanya, we were kind of losing you on this end. I know, I'm sorry, all of these technical situations here. First, we had a hard time getting Zoom together during the pandemic. Then we we're experts at that. Now we're moving into in-person meetings to have a hybrid option and we're working out the kinks. So can you restate your question again?
My question, Monique, was when she speaks and when Monique speaks, I noticed that the screen for us on the virtual end, we're no longer able to see who's in the room. And so I was asking Monique if that was an error on my end or is that a technical issue on hers? And Monique just explained that's the way it's set up at the
But what you could do on your end is go at the very top where it says view, click on that and then select a gallery view. And that way, at any point someone is speaking, you'll still see all the boxes.
Okay.
Well, I'm not sure if during share screen, you could select the option where you can see multiple boxes at once. Is that helping?
And Jill has her hand up too, so she may be able to add to that as well.
Yeah, so if once you do that, if you double click or click on the box you want to see big, it will focus on that as your main box, even if somebody's screen sharing. So like right now I can see the room as my big box. And so you can see it better if you're on a computer. So you're basically pinning that window.
Well, pinning the box. Yeah, that's an option too. Thank you, Jill. I know we could do it.
Tanya's audible, there's something on.
Yeah. that hurt.
Yeah, so Tanya, I'm not sure if on your end, if there's something you could do with the mic because you kind of go in and out a little bit as you're speaking.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
if in the event we ask you to restate your comment or question, that's why. So we'll hear you.
Oh, sure thing, no worries. I don't know. I think Dina Cole has we're just open for Q&As if anyone had any other questions. And was your Ozzy, was your question answered by Dina Cole?
I have any further questions.
Does anyone else have any questions?
Well, I don't have a question. This is Scott speaking, Scott Parsons. I'm just glad that we're having this conversation because it's one of those, it's great, kind of get refreshed and keeps the focus that we all have the potential, right? For implicit bias. And so I appreciate the reminder of that reality.
Well, thank you, Scott. It is a dialogue to continue to have. I recognize, even when I take the test, when I first took it, I took the test several times just because my results initially was, I would say, different than I anticipated when I first took the test. My results show that I do identify as an African-American female, and my statement does not state of any discriminations or any objections towards any other race. But when I first took the test, it identified that I had a preference serving and identifying with European Americans versus African Americans or any other race. And so for me, I thought it was shocking. So I retook the test. But it also gave me something to look into, because I do serve, as a provider, I do serve people from all different backgrounds, all different races, socioeconomic statuses. And so it gave me some ways that I show up for myself as a provider, as well as an organizer out in the community, and how people receive me. So since I took my test, I actually I surveyed my community recipients on how they receive us as an organization and also as a provider, because again, it impacts the way that we service is delivered to our communities. And so us just being aware and having that different conversation is an important dialogue. And it can be very complex sometimes, because sometimes we still, as a provider, been doing what we're doing for a long time, or just in the field that you're in your profession, and especially if you're in leadership, sometimes you don't recognize it because we've been on a conditional pathway for so long that it has kind of blindsided us. So it's always a good, every now and then, Scott, to just kind of remind us, hey, that we're here and times have changed and things influence our biases at time, whether it's the way that we grew up, our background, our professional development, or just the way things have changed. So it's always good to kind of have that check-in with ourselves, especially when you're serving a very diverse community.
Not to mention, Tanya, and you bring up a good point, we're constantly changing. So our implicit biases are constantly changing. So even if we experience a traumatic event, that will automatically change our implicit biases, and we will start changing how we behave when something similar occurs and triggers that. So it's always good to be able to check in with ourselves.
This is Ozzy. I would like to know approximately how long is that test that you posted? How long to take the test and then to get the results back? Is it like where we could do it now? Or what do you suggest?
You can do it whenever you're free. It's literally about a 5-minute process to take the test, and you get your results immediately. So it doesn't take too long. It requires using 2 letters on the keypad, so it's probably best to do it on a laptop, a computer, or if you have a tablet with a keyboard. But it's not a very long drawn out test at all, and there's multiples on there. So if you see one on there that piques your fancy, I would encourage you to take it.
And I'll say from D. Nicole, from my experience and also some other individuals that I had take the test, it has been most successful using a desktop or a laptop versus your cell phone. Or maybe it might work better on a tablet, but definitely on a smaller device, it wasn't best responses from my experience and also from others that actually had. So I probably recommend, if you can, to try to use it on your laptop or your desktop or your tablet.
I had sorry.
No, go ahead, Evan.
Yeah, this is Evan. So I had a question and then a statement also. So the question, my question is around the training, other than the test and then conversation kind of after that, are there other aspects that are involved in the training?
Yes, we would talk a lot about how to adjust our behaviors when we are recognizing our implicit bias, right? So I've experienced this quite a bit just within my own self, where I would recognize my implicit bias and I would change my behavior. However, recognizing your bias and changing your behavior also does not take away that cognitive incongruency that you're experiencing of, but wait a minute, that's not how I see people, and yet I behave that way. So we would definitely want to talk a lot about that so that we can get to a place where we're accepting of being human and making mistakes as well. So we would talk about techniques and how to address that when somebody does recognize it. Like, oh, well, you just locked your car door when you saw me and then you unlocked it.
Thank you. And then I guess my statement is one, just appreciating Ozzy for bringing the group here to speak and having conversation about this. Also, Bina, for sharing your experience of implicit bias. And I think I know for me, it demonstrates a courage as well as a vulnerability in sharing that. I think it's kind of also a unique way thinking about the onboarding experience for CAB to get to know each other in a way that's, you know, can be quite personal and also quite vulnerable and kind of bring folks closer together. So that when we're, you know, talking about issues and addressing issues that we do, you know, we have kind of a more of a sense of where we're each coming from. And so just wanted to share that appreciation.
And this is Monique. I was going to make a comment, which was very similar to Evan's. I was going to ask how the training differs from the assessment. And you pretty much answered it. But I also want to just state my experience with implicit bias. I know the way I was brought into this conversation was through my sister-in-law, who's an educator, and she mentioned it to me, and I was in total denial. I was like, no way, you know. And as we continue to delve into it, you know, I started learning more about it. And I think that would probably just be the initial response for most people. They're just, you know, it's a denial. You don't want to accept your biases and definitely don't want to accept them publicly, you know. And so I have taken the test, the Harvard test, and it's been a long time because we had this conversation many years ago. And I would highly suggest that people take the test because, you know, it's an eye opener for you to continue to grow as a person. And that's both personally and professionally, because even though my situation dealt with family matters, it was just general family dynamics. It wasn't about specific groups or anything like that, but within your family, there are different groups, right? So, but if you're working with a, I would say a marginalized community in the public or a justice impacted community, I think it's really important to understand this process. So thank you.
Monique, thank you for sharing that personal experience. We often think about when we're working and vulnerable populations revolving our justice system, the individuals that we're going to come across. And when they automatic sometimes work with individuals from our advocacy point, is that they already feel.
Excuse me, this is Crawford. Tanya, we're having a difficult time hearing you.
Oh no. Are you still having?
Yeah, maybe you need to be closer to your microphone or.
I think it's farther away.
Okay, yeah, I think it's my mic on my laptop and the way it's positioned.
Get closer.
Is that better?
That is.
Okay, great. I was just mentioning that from the perspective and working with along with the individuals involved in the justice system, we often heard before about how people receive them when they're coming out of their quote unquote, as one individual said, their judgment day. And they're coming back into society, how people receive them. And as you're going to be a service of them or be a part of the policymakers for them, we often look at one individual once said, well, I done did my time, I done served my judgment day. Now I'm going back into society. How does the world view me? How do they see me? And often we deny that we have a biases towards someone that have ever experienced some type of event that's not normal to society. And so when we come face to face with them, even whether it's a family member or whether it's part of someone that we're going to work with, we have just that notch of bias that shows up for individuals. And we're going to say, as you may not see it and you still may be in denial, but the other person receives it. It's a sense of energy that transfers to counterparents that is there, and they recognize that. And that very 2 to 3 minutes that we just had that initial interaction, it determines how they're going to receive your services and sometimes adhere to how things move forward in their next process of life. And that little 2 to 3 minutes encounters really makes a difference on the people that we're serving and hoping to rehabilitate and make a change.
Any other questions? Comments?
I would just like to this is Ozzy, I'd like to make a statement. And this is going to be some self-disclosure. I can recall a moment in time when I was in a meeting at my community college, and there was people who were in the room currently were there. And I felt that I was thrown under the bus by being formerly incarcerated. And at that moment, I didn't know anything about reentry and that whole process. I had just been going to school and taking some classes and really getting charged. And I shared this information and confidentially with someone. And they were so excited because here was a person that's formerly incarcerated doing really well here in the college. But I thought when they pulled that they were discriminating against me. And I was wanting to quit school because I was so embarrassed. That was the defining moment for me. And Michael, you were in the room that day. And that was the word. And I was cried, I was quitting. And I had a moment and I decided that I was going to make lemonade out of that lemon. And I became an advocate that day for the reentry population. And I started a club. I started advocating in the community, going around telling everybody I'm formerly incarcerated. And I want everybody to know at LMC, there's a place, and there's a person there that will be willing to walk you through the process. Whatever you need, I'm there to support you. But I changed it around. But guess what? There might be some people that might not have that type of attitude, you know, because that's a part of their internalized implicit bias. So I'm an example, and I really, you know, this is part of the passion of my giving back, to make everyone aware, you know, and, you know, we become vulnerable when we shed that skin of wanting people to understand why that, and this is my why, that I thought implicit bias was such a wonderful thing to present to this board and as to become a part of our onboarding process, if it's even just taking the simple test. But I'm hopeful that we'll have dialogue after this presentation. And I would like to thank you, both Tanya and D. Nicole, for your time and your energy in presenting this for us today.
Thank you, Ms. Ozzy.
Thank you all. Thank you, Ozzy, for this.
Thank you very much, Nicole and Tanya, and most informative. You should join us more often, and if you can, hey, what is it? We can book within and be careful about what we see. But thank you very much for joining us. Were there any other comments or questions for these two ladies? Any other? Well, thank you very much.
You guys have a great weekend.
Bye.
Bye. Okay, well, after that presentation, I think it's time to move to our next item on the agenda. And our next item, maybe, pardon me, Monique, you could go to attachment 3. And it's just a brief update on our membership status. And I've asked Evan if you'd be kind enough to recap certain things, where we are, etc. Thank you, sir.
For our, this is Evan speaking. So for our current CAB membership, within the 12 voting members, we have a bit of a switch in terms of geography from the last 6 months or so, whereas now we have 6 members of the West County, 4 in the East and 2 in the Central County. We also continue to have the 3 vacant alternate vacancies open. And so kind of the continued support in identifying folks or outreach to folks that may be interested in sitting on the board as alternates, or I think also kind of thinking about that distribution, looking again more towards the Central County at this point, if there's folks in that area. But that's kind of where we stand right now in terms of our membership.
This is Monique. This is Monique. Evan, do you want to talk about the one application that we had? I don't think we've talked about that to the full CAB board. Just to provide.
Talk about it now, or I could talk about it in the OCEC share out.
Okay.
Since you brought it up, I'll talk about it now.
Okay.
So we did have a applicant come to OCEC, and we did ask them a number of questions. And we had recommended them to come to the full CAB. Unfortunately, they had some serious family matters that kind of took them away from being available at this time. So we remain with the same number of vacancies. Yeah.
Thank you, Evan. And again, even though OCEC is charged with recruitment, they're charged with reaching out to the community. It sure wouldn't hurt, by George, for each one of us, if you have a friend or you have a contact somewhere, get that message out there. We could use the help. And again, I think as Evan has pointed out, we've got 3 alternate vacancies. And the difficulty is if one person slips off of our voting member roll, we're in trouble again. So what is it? The pressure's on. We got to figure out a way to do this son of a gun. And I don't quite know how, but we'll keep at it. And I know that Evan's committee, they're trying to do some new things. They're trying to look at faith-based communities, add that to our toolkit, etc. And we'll keep our fingers crossed. But thank you again, Evan. Yeah. Are there any other comments? Let's first go from board members. Are there any comments or questions from staff? And are there any comments from those in the public? Charles, we haven't heard from you in a while. You got anything for us?
Not at this time, Crawford, but I appreciate the opportunity, sir.
Now, what about you? Remember, you and I talked previously, you got to clear your schedule and see if you can put cab on there.
It's tough. We have capacity challenges like most organizations at this time. So we're in transition here. So it doesn't look like that would be able to happen.
Okay, well, I'm gonna keep bugging you, Charles.
No worries. Thanks,
Okay,
Crawford.
you're welcome. Any other questions, comments? If not, then we'll move to the next item. The next item, could you call that up, please, on the agenda, which is feedback, member feedback. And this is going to be feedback from those of you around the table here. And what I wanted to share with you here is, first of all, your leadership team of Nicole Marie, and then of Lanita Self. We've all been working kind of behind the scenes, trying to figure out what we can do to get in better touch with our CAB board. And most of you have heard from us. And I'd now like to share some of the comments. And don't get nervous now. These will be all right. Don't get nervous with these comments. First of all, one of you said we need more participation from CAB members. Another CAB member said we need to encourage new members to participate more. And be aware that there is no wrong question. Going on, we should give new members more encouragement. Mentoring them is the key, since there are a group of us that will be leaving, Ozzy, myself, and Nicole. And it is just so important that we hold their hand. So I'm speaking to you, Evan, and to you at OCEC. We got to make sure we develop something so that we take care of and we get our arms around these new members, because we want more than 1 year out of you. 1 year is good enough. And then this is kind of interesting. There's not a clear understanding of what CAB does. This is from our new members. And this is after we had the Dad Blame retreat. Now, I think that's interesting. And I go back to you, Michael. I didn't. No, here's what's interesting, Michael. When I first came to CAB, even after retreats, etc., I had the same doggone question. I said, well, what do they really do? So maybe that means all of us have to do a little more thinking when we present CAB, and particularly to our new members. So heads up, that's all that one is. And then we had a comment that we were looking forward to the survey from those who are currently incarcerated. So that survey that your committee, Ozzy, is so important. So heads up to all of us. And then another comment, excuse me here, similar to the one that we just made, coming on board, this individual did not understand what was required of him. Interesting. Another comment, we would like to see people on camera when joining our meetings, such as what we're doing now. It's kind of weird or strange seeing a blank screen and only a voice. So Monique and Patrice, let's see if we can do something about that. Maybe, I don't know if we can, but it would kind of be nice if we could. And I'm going to save this comment for last. Oh no, maybe I'll say it now. One member of this board made this comment, and I thought this was precious. And the comment was, Monique is an angel and is amazing with CAB. So don't get nervous over there, Monique. let's move to the next item.
Thank you.
This.
I didn't say that.
Yeah.
I know that one.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. This individual, and this is, I think, so appropriate as we move forward, as we get our arms around what we're trying to do. This individual said he wants to know where things go. Where are they kept? And when things are created, documentation and policies, where do we go to find them? I thought that was interesting. And then this individual also said we need a better understanding of our deliverables. Again, these comments are saying we need to start looking within. Maybe we need to pause a little bit to see how we do things, how we approach things. Oh, we're not done yet, just a minute here. We need a greater departmental interaction from those receiving AB 109 funds. We've got all of these county agencies, our CBOs. We need greater interaction with this board. I think that was an excellent comment. More participation from committee chairs at these meetings. So we've got to figure out, Monique, hope you're listening. Oh, you are. We got to figure out to get our committee chairs more involved in these meetings. And then finally here, somebody said that they like the interactive process and the way we keep in touch with members. And this person also said they have a real good working relationship with Ozzy. I don't know how that could happen, Ozzy. So those are the comments that we've had from each of us. And we got to really think about, we have work plans, we have aggressive plans and items we want to take care of at the various committees. But maybe this is good because this is taking a look. We're looking within. You know, we need something. We need to figure out how we can do a better job so that new members understand what is the purpose, what are they doing, functions, etc. So let me be quiet. Comments? Any comments? Justin? Anything? I'm going to get each one of you, so you better get ready here. Justin. Okay, Justin.
Yeah, I think my mind always goes to like, how do we fix the problem that's being addressed, right? What are some actionable items? I think like the storage system of documents is a really simple process if there are no legalities that we need to be considering. Because I think that's something that I really crave. I would love to, we get a lot of documents in the subcommittee meetings that we're reviewing in real time, but having access to them either in advance or to reflect back on at a later date can be really powerful. And I think what it allows participants to do is just continue to iterate and continue to enhance and improve those documents over time. But if we're just coming with one document at that one period of time, I think it's really limited. So that's something that I personally would be willing to take on and support. I don't know if there's other people who would want to work on that with me, but excited to kind of see that move forward.
Great. So you'll handle that with Monique.
Perfect.
Great. Okay. See, Brenda, we didn't ask you to do anything. Brenda, you're next. Just wait now.
What did you say? Okay. Yes, this is Brenda. As a new member, we tend to want to take it all in. And I do have questions about, okay, what exactly are we doing? You know, like I go out to my community and, you know, they know about CAB now. They didn't know before. And so I think we need a better way to get the community informed, because like me, I go to church, so I go to my church, and every time Monique sent me something, that's pertaining to the city of Richmond.
Uh.
I'm bombarding them with it. It's like, look, this is the kind of stuff that we need to get. So I was looking forward to Van Hook.
Yes.
I'm trying to get to him. And how do we communicate with each other? I know you and I have, go back and forth, but then, how do I talk to like other members? Is it okay if I just, look, I'll call you up, or I'll send you a text, I have this question. Are you okay with it? So I need to make sure that we're all comfortable with communicating with each other and our community.
Excellent, as long as we are sensitive to
Definitely.
that Dad Blame Brown Act.
Yeah, see, that's the issue I have to talk about.
But
That.
again, it's important. You've
Yeah.
got to be sensitive to
Yes.
that. You can talk to somebody on another committee, but depending on the number of individuals
That are at
on
that
the committee, you got to be careful. We don't want to cross those lines. Thank you.
As far as that, I heard decision-making, so we're not a decision-making body, like the Board of Supervisors, that the Brown Act really didn't interacting with each other like that. I heard that in a different meeting, a different county meeting.
Oh,
I don't know if that's true or not. I think Joanne might have been at that meeting. I don't know if she's still on, but at the Council of Homelessness meeting, they said something about the Brown Act and people who are not decision-making bodies, they can still communicate, like.
maybe.
So I'm not sure what,
Yeah.
in what context that's discussed at
Okay.
Council on Homelessness, but it's always just to be on the safe side that you're interacting with, or outside of a meeting, that you're communicating maybe directly one-to-one with with another member. If, let's say, because I know the three of you are on programs and services, right? And let's say the three of you coming together, you guys have decided want to schedule on a Saturday to knock out, to really look through this work plan. Well, if the three of you meeting is actually a fulfillment of quorum, it's technically, you're now violating Brown Act because your meeting together hadn't been posted or anything of that nature. So those kind of things is where you kind of want to shy on the, you want to kind of be on the safe side around that. Yes.
What about two members from the committee?
Yeah, if you haven't, if two of you have met, and if two members together do not meet a quorum, then you're okay.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if you are hitting quorum coming together, then it's considered it's considered a meeting, and therefore.
Yes.
So with emails, with threads, that's inclusive of that too, when you're doing emails, like if I email Rena, I can't then.
Yeah, so that's why if you want a communication that is a little bit more broader, you want the rest of CAB to know, it's best to email us, and then we can help facilitate that for you on your behalf.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you again.
Mhm.
Yes.
Two things. I would like to hear from the chairmans more, just so that we know in real time what's going on when you guys have your sub meeting. And the second thing is I would love to glean from the people that are in their 3 years so that I can understand the history of CAP. So we're not doing something that we shouldn't, not doing something, but we know the obstacles or the things that you tried in the past that maybe didn't work and why they didn't work. So that in our second or third year where you may not be here or unavailable, we're not doing something that we would not have did had we had that information. So I definitely would like to mentor and be gleaned from those that are leaving.
Thank you. Okay, another item on our mentoring list there, Evan. Okay, good. Ozzy.
Okay, one thing that I'm kind of gleaning is, from this particular meeting is the responsibilities of the board members and what they are and how that can be a documentation, concise document of what some of the requirements, what board members do, the agenda, we already know that we're required, that's in our charter, but also, it detailed specifically outside of the charter, maybe a little, to a reminder, but also the other item would be something similar to a policy and procedures of how we do things, each committee, specifically, like example, I know more about policy and budget, things that come down specifically month to month, you can pretty much tell from the year before, but also, and this is for new members who are looking to, join a specific community, but also like program and services. What is it that program and services does? Well, we're responsible for a survey that's done annually, and maybe there'll be some other things additionally added, but also the outreach committee, what they do specifically. And I know it's drawn up, it's written someplace, but to kind of like really condense when your members are on board, kind of like it cement the responsibilities of what each of the committees do. And I like the records management retrieval. Thank you for that suggestion, where we can actually go and find those budgets and agendas and things from last year. Specifically, something that came up, I was trying to find what month was it that I went to the Board of Supervisors, just something that we can have for our own, all the board members' disposal, where they can go back and look at these different things and the different things that were highlighted. Yeah, that's just an idea, complicated, I'm sure.
It's funny, you opened the door here now to something. Here's what your leadership team is working on right now. We're putting together, let's talk about programs and services. And my wife now, because she hears all of this stuff, and I tried to say, what do we want to call this? She said, why are you wasting all this time? It's Cliff Notes. Oh, thank you, dear. Okay. Now your Cliff Notes, we're thinking about having a little packet for programs and services. We're going to have your programs and services charter. You're going to have your programs and services intro that you are aware of. You're going to have a programs and services motions cheat sheet. So when you make a motion, how do you go through that? We're going to have a membership list for 2023. We're going to have a list of the CBO service providers and what they do. In addition to that, we're going to have the most recent AB 109 survey, and that's in your little particularly Cliff Notes. And then we're going to have your current work plan. In addition to that, it's going to be open to you once you get this, and you may get with your group and say, what else do we need in this booklet or this kit? So we're working on that. We've got that for you. You'll get yours now that, well, we've mentioned it. We'll send it to you today. How's that? And Evan, you're going to have one, as will policy and budget. So we're trying to work through this to give you something. Now, we're going to work through it. Now, this is just the first phase. We go through this, get your comments. Then we're going to come to you, Patrice. And we're going to say, okay, Patrice, this is what the group has come up with. Do you have suggestions? And the key is, we don't want to turn this into a goddamn binder, because if it does, you won't read it. But if we make it, and we're going to have this so that you'll have a file, and you can just click on, and we've listed them, item number 1 through like mine. That's the ones that the Cliff Notes for the leadership book. We've got 17 items. And so what we want to make sure is, and we're going to really need your help, and go through this thing to say, okay, this is what this standing committee is. And then you share it with your committee. And then this is something most important, we pass on. Because we want to, you've been gone a year now. When Michael joins us again, we can give Michael a booklet, and he may think he knows all of this stuff, but we're going to give him some more information. And, for example, we're going to have the CAB PowerPoint on Evans. He's going to have the ambassador kits, et cetera, et cetera. So all of this stuff, we want to put it so that it's hands-on and readily available. So thanks for mentioning, and I'm sorry to go off on that type of
Was I
tangent.
reading your mind?
Yeah.
Because you never told, you shared that before.
Yeah.
Got my crystal ball.
Well, see, we got a quick talk, and then I'm making too many notes. Okay, Rita, I think we got enough time. Rita, any comments on the things here for our group? Any comments that we were presenting?
I think for me personally, just because I'm a new member and everything like that, I second guess myself, and I'm wondering if I'm like really fulfilling my duties and stuff, or doing them correctly. So I guess the mentorship part has helped a lot. Like I feel it's been great that I can reach out to you guys and stuff like that, if I have any questions.
Well, Rita, you sent me an email. Hopefully I responded quickly to you. And guess what? You're doing a good job.
Okay.
And the way you filled out that form, you asked, well, gee, did I fill it out well enough? Christ, that was better than the ones I filled out. I can tell you that much. So keep doing what you're doing. Outstanding. Scott.
You know, I don't have a lot to add. I thought, very interesting list. None of it surprised me. So no, at this point, I don't have something to throw out there that changes anything.
Good, good. Evan?
I think the one that, other than what was already mentioned, the one that stood out to me that I would like to see is the AB 109 funded projects and CBOs having more interaction with those folks, either in terms of presentation or going to, the organization or whatever. I think that is a really great suggestion and it really helps inform the advisory of kind of what folks are dealing with, both in terms of interaction with their clients, but then also I imagine we would kind of hear potential limitations on the funding and things they can or can't do with the funding that might help us otherwise.
Great, great. Well, any comments now? Okay, staff or any staff members left? Staff, any comments? Any comments from the public? Charles, it's you and Michael Pitts. Anything from you, Charles?
Not really. I'll just give a little historic background as far as how I participated as a public member. I would say we had the opportunity to do a PowerPoint presentation as part of the AB 109 collaborative, I should say. And each organization had an opportunity to present to the CAB, as far as their core services that they actually provide as being part of AB 109. And I know we have, the partnership meetings at times that ORJ puts on, which is great. And usually an organization has the opportunity to be spotlighted, to share what they actually do, which is very important. But I know that's something in the past that CAB has allowed when they're putting together agendas and guest speakers. So I would say I had the opportunity to provide a presentation in my experience, and I've been working in AB 109 for about 8 years since coming on board here at the Workforce Board. So I say I was just sharing that to say that if you want to get to know the different partners, you can feature them at each meeting, each time, as far as the CAB getting to know the core services of what some of the organizations do, both public agencies such as ourselves, as well as the CBO nonprofits.
Charles, thank you. Appreciate that. In fact, I'm just making a note to feature the CPOs, see if we can at each of our meetings. Excellent suggestion. Thank you for your input.
You're very welcome.
You're not getting off the hook.
Yes, Michael, I guess my comments would be one that, I never wanted to be accused of somebody who was like living in the past. However, before the board having to go electronically, and I believe everybody on this board, that's the only way they actually know the board. That so meeting in person is a new thing. So I think maybe the invitation really needs to go out to CBOs, because and before we went electronic, that was part of the CAB experience, as it were. So the CAB meetings would occur, and the audience, because there was no, Jill was always here as well. So there was so that there was CBOs, there were folks from agencies that were here, so in the audience. So that's one thing. And also I know you have folks who talk about obstacles some talk about maybe obstacles that coming on as a new person. And I know that was a challenge for folks that were coming in during the year. So I know before me, with me, and after me, there was a lot of thought going into the whole retreat. So hopefully all this information is really, being utilized and how you have to tweak what the retreat's gonna be about. And I know one of my frustrations were that there was a lot of information there and I thought the information was there, but as Crawford said earlier, you don't want to make something a big binder, and it was a big binder, and all that information was there. It was a lot, but it was all there, and then there was kind of a resource to find out. And then lastly, I think one of the challenges you folks are going to have is that, you have new people come in, you don't necessarily have kind of a legacy where, it was really easier if you came in and there was somebody who had been here for 1 year or 2 years before, you're coming in the subcommittee, you can kind of ease your way in and kind of learn. But as I'm sure some people in this room and in the past, you fresh in and you're a vice chair.
Or a chair.
Yeah, or a chair. Yeah. So that happened to me. I was the chair of, outreach, and so that's just my thing. And I just really hope we can get the word out that now that we're meeting in person and that, there's an invitation to kind of go back to the old days and actually have interaction and have CBOs and folks that decisions with realignment and 8109, it really impacts them.
Well, thank you, Michael. And before we go to Jill, now, just for those of you around the table here, if there's something that you don't like that I'm doing, blame it on Michael, because he is my mentor. And from veterans to ORJ to the study of the LA Sheriff's Department, Michael, he's my mentor. So if there are any complaints, please don't come to me. Just go to him. I will send each of you his phone number and I'll send you his email address. But thank you, Michael. Moving next now, Jill.
Yeah, so funny. I was about to raise my hand when you called me out, Michael. So you're always good about that. And I'm going to call you out too, because I think you finished your rotation. So you certainly could be a member of CAB again. But on another note, so two things. So Rena, you mentioned about the decision-making and the conversation that we had at the Council on Homelessness. And I don't know if you were referring to the piece of legislation that the Council of Homelessness was going to send a support letter, which is out there. The Board of Supervisors have supported that piece of legislation that allows advisory bodies that are non-decision-making to continue to meet virtually. And it's a piece of legislation in the state of California. So we'll see what happens with that. And then on another note is, I think one of the challenges that CAB has that no other advisory body in the county has is your terms. And it's a choice that's been made. I feel like a broken record on this one. 1-year terms are non-existent on any other body in the county. And when you do a max of 3, what you're basically doing is losing the historic memory constantly. And so it's just something to keep in mind. Most other advisory bodies have either 2 to 4-year terms, and there's very few of them that have max number of terms that max out and make people step down. So it is one of the challenges that you all face constantly, and it's because of the way CAB is formed that creates that even more. So just FYI.
Jill, thank you. Thank you very much. If there aren't any other comments, we've got about a half hour left. We can move to the next item on the agenda. That's item number 7. And Jill, you're back up. If you would please, any information to share with us from the Board of Supervisors?
I sure do. And I'm surrounded by dogs. So if one barks, I apologize. March 21st, the Board of Supervisors recognized Rubicon programs on their 50th anniversary. So they received a proclamation. And April 4th, the Board of Supervisors had their Cesar Chavez celebration, which is always exciting. You could go back and watch it. Lots of great music. And it was in person for the first time, so they also got to share some great food. And they also adopted a support position for AB 817, which is what I just mentioned, that piece of legislation that would allow advisory bodies to continue to meet virtually. And then April 24th and 25th coming up are the Board of Supervisors budget hearings. You can look at the agendas when they're published, and if you want to just click in and listen to certain departments give their sort of budget overall, it's a really interesting way to learn about the budget process and to kind of see what's out there. And we are shifting as a county to a new budget system so that the budget documents are all online and will be much more user friendly. So if you wanted to go in and see like the sheriff's budget, you could go in and see how things are broken out, what kind of funding he gets from various areas. It's supposed to be a much more user-friendly system. The budget documents are all online right now, but they're just PDFs. So, and that concludes my report.
So thank you very much. The next item on the agenda, Evan, outreach and community engagement. Any remarks?
Yes, so OCEC, this is Evan. OCEC met on March 21st. We reviewed our work plan, our 2023 work plan. And while we decided that everybody on the committee is responsible for all tasks, we went through and kind of assigned some point or voluntold some point people. Some people just volunteered as well. So each task in our work plan has a lead person. As well as a co-person or other support. Even within those tasks, we did identify other resources, whether it be that through ORJ or through other folks in other committees. We talked a little bit around our outreach list, and specifically with Reverend Diana Hook, identifying faith-based and faith-based community organizations also to add to our outreach list, incorporate those folks. And so he was really the point person on that. We also had some additional conversation around our orientation and onboarding. And all of this conversation today is really helpful to add into that. And we pushed our, we got a little bit, we had great conversation, and so time was of the essence. And our next meeting, we'll talk about the ambassador program, as well as some more conversation around the membership cultivation. I think that was it. Our next meeting is next week, Tuesday.
Thank you, Evan. Are there any questions of Evan? Okay, next item and next group, programs and services. All right.
Hi, this is Latanya Thompson. So our meeting highlights are, we discussed an updated CAB, PS AB 109 provider survey and questions for CVOS. We discussed an updated CABS, PNS AB 109 provider survey questions for in custody participants, and then we updated the PS work plans. Our next steps for the subcommittee members will research CVOS to make a contact in preparation for site visit and survey questions. Any questions?
I love it. We're now mentoring.
On the spot.
Love it, because you didn't give it, Ozzy. There, hey, there we go. Okay, keep it up. Justin.
Yeah, so at the Policy and Budget Subcommittee, we discussed and reviewed last year's survey. We went through the not community engagement programs and what's the title of your services survey. We kind of took out some line items that we want to dive a little bit deeper into and bring back to your group. We also reviewed the staff meeting document and are going to review that in more detail with recommendations from each of the members at the next meeting. Monique, this is a reminder to you, if you could send that out via Word to the subcommittee members. And then we finalized our work plan, which is available upon request. We have a meeting next week.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Justin. The next item on our agenda, and again, we are now mentoring here, is Rena, Council on Homelessness.
So I attended two meetings, one on March 16th and one on April 6th, but at the March 16th meeting, I'm sorry, we discussed the purpose of the COC complaint policy, and we talked about the point in time survey results. They're going to be presented to the County on Homelessness meeting on May 4th. Discussed how PUI beds are still available for people who test positive for COVID, so they can be in isolation. We talked about Measure X RFP update, and how we're shifting to hybrid meetings, and we also discussed the continuum of care meetings and how people who are encouraged, who have lived experience, they're encouraged to participate. And also there's a guaranteed income event on April 25th, and our next meeting is on May 4th.
Thank you. And before we go to the next agenda item, I want to thank you, Rena. You're a new member. Latanya, you're a new member. Justin, all of these new members that have made presentations. And again, we mentor by getting them involved. Thank you, Ozzy, and we'll thank Nicole for you getting involved. And Evan, the next time around, the vice chair of OCEC's got to step up to the plate. How's that?
Okay.
Okay, well, great. Monique, I believe you're up. You're the next person on the agenda.
Yes, I am. I am reporting out on behalf of Lanita. So she is the CAB representative for the RSC steering committee, but I also attend on behalf of Patrice as the director of ORJ. So we attended on March 8th. It was a virtual Teams meeting. And it was a good meeting because the dynamics of those meetings have changed, or the logistics have changed. They used to meet, I believe, quarterly, and now they'll be meeting twice a year, sorry. And so we went through the Reentry Success Center's director's report, and we learned that they will be taking on a new center, which will be in Alameda County, which is effective either April or May. So that's great news because they're doing a great job with servicing Contra Costa County. They now will service Alameda County as well. And then Pat Mims, who is the director, he talked about the unveiling of the Art of Peace event, which is it's a project that they work on. They're actually taking guns that have been confiscated and breaking them down and turning them into an art project. And so they'll be unveiling that on Saturday, April 29th, and all are welcome and invited to attend. And then they will have a reentry resource fair, which is a welcome fair. It'll be in person, and it's on Saturday, July 28th. And I have sent an invite or invitational email out when I send out my massive email to our partners. And many of you, I think all of you are, as CAB members, are on there. And then they also talked about a transportation program. The chair is, I think his name is Jim. He talked about a transportation program that they are implementing for the reentry population. And basically the gist of it is that for people that are not able to get to appointments, they'll be able to provide services for them. And our next meeting will likely be in September, but the date hasn't been determined yet.
Thank you, Monique.
And yes.
Are there any questions of Monique?
28th is Friday. It's Friday the 28th. Resource fair.
Yeah, Monique?
Oh, it's Friday, sorry. Okay, thank you. Friday, the 28th, not Saturday. Okay,
Thank you.
I will make that correction.
All right, are there any other questions here before we move to our next agenda item, which will be next steps?
I have a question.
Oh, yes, please.
With that resource fair, that's also Clean Slate Day as well. Clean Slate Day as well. And that clean slate is the expungement offered by the Public Defender's Office to expunge criminal records.
Mhm. Any other comments? All right, moving to the next agenda item. Monique, next steps. Maybe we could put one of the items is to see if we could invite a CBO. We'll try. Any other next steps that board members? Yes, Ozzy.
How about the board members to take that test, the Harvard.ed test, implicit bias test?
And then give us feedback.
Give us feedback.
All right, let's try it.
Barbara, at any time, do the subcommittees share out their work plans?
The work plans, let me see now, if I'm correct, these work plans are public once they're done, so anybody has access. Or, yeah, there's nothing secret. These aren't top secret, that's for sure.
Right, I'm just wondering as a chair
Yes,
for the committee, spending 5 or 10 minutes just going through what your work plan is.
okay,
Just because the way it's listed in the notes, it's task 1, task 5, task 6, and
yes,
nobody that was not in our meeting
okay.
know what that is.
Can you put that, maybe that's not a next step of the next meeting, but once the work plans are brought together and consummated, et cetera, then we can have one meeting, each vice chair will present the work plan. How's that? Or something of that nature for each of the standing committees. Excellent suggestion. Excellent.
After they've been approved.
After the committee has approved it, yes. Anything else?
Also, I would like to know what would be the next step in us processing, going through the process of getting implicit bias training implemented. What would that look? How do we process that from here at this point?
Well, okay, we had the presentation, which was good. Maybe you could get back with, you were working with Nicole, correct? And with Patrice and with Monique, and see what's our next step.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't want to just, let it sit. We had one presentation and take the test and see you later. I don't think that's what our goal is.
Right.
So let's take it to the next step, and maybe there's more in-depth training. Maybe there's a session that we need to have on training that was recommended here in the presentation. What's that?
The big picture was to implement the training as part of our onboarding,
Okay,
in addition to the Brown Act. And also a part of our providers and CBOs to be on board with some type of form
okay.
of training for their staff as well. So I would like it to be something, a policy initiated.
Well, then let's lay out the plan. And then once you have a plan as to the various portions of the plan, and then let's bring it before the board. Let's get rolling, see if we can make it happen. How's that?
Sounds like a plan.
Okay, yeah. All right, any other questions?
Not a question, but a clarification,
Yeah.
maybe a question to the board. I know that for one of the subcommittees, if I'm not mistaken, maybe it was programs and services, there was some discussion about scheduling presentations from CBOs. Did I get that right? Or was that just the site visits? So anyway,
We were talking about kind of both.
A little bit of
We
both.
wanna we were focusing primarily on whether or not we were gonna ask at the site visits for the presentations. We hadn't really kind of formatted the process of how it was gonna be rolled out.
okay, so, so would you all prefer to work those sort of details out prior to us scheduling presentations for the full cab? Or want to throw it out for discussion of how folks would feel is the best route to go? Because I just heard the next step is to get at least a CBO here. And I know you all have been talking about doing site visits and, so yeah, how would the cab desire to
Yeah,
go
good
about,
point. Yeah.
that?
And Patrice, one second, so we don't want to duplicate ourselves here.
Right, yeah, that's the point. So that's where I don't want us to get for the
Yeah.
full cab to get ahead of the work that some of the
On the-
individual subcommittees are doing, because time hasn't really been, or time needs to be taken to work those pieces out, right? So, so yeah, I just kind of want to leave it at least to the group to kind of decide how you would like to operate. And actually, the more I think about it, maybe that's why it's probably best to do a presentation of each of the work plans from each subcommittee. So that way, maybe that helps outline what is sort of to be expected in terms of the next step forward for the full body. I hope I'm not causing more confusion than
No.
necessary, but just terms of organization or workflow, what would be most helpful and useful to you all? So that way there's synergy between the work that's happening in the subcommittee to what is needed or should be discussed at the full body level.
Patrice.
Yes.
I'll go with.
Okay. I'm here.
Maybe what we do first is let the standing committee lay it out. Maybe you say, these are the 3 places we're gonna visit. So since we're gonna visit, their after action report can kind of be a report to CAB. Those that you don't visit, have them come. And again, let's throw it back to you, Ozzy.
Right.
And is Brenda on your committee by chance? Oh, doggone it. Okay, let Brenda do a little work. Okay, no, okay. So we'll throw it back to her standing committee to lay out how you want it to do by CBO and by presentation here to CAB.
Okay.
Okay,
Does
good,
that
good.
work for you?
That works.
Okay.
We can
Okay.
determine which of the CBOs we're gonna individually visit, how we're gonna do our visits. And the ones that we're not visiting, we can utilize them as presenters.
Okay, sounds good. And then, so then maybe instead of, for the next step, we can switch out possibly a presentation from a CBO and instead have a presentation of the work plans from
Yeah.
each subcommittee. Does that work for everybody? Okay,
Okay.
did you get that, Monique? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
think one thing to flag as we go through this process is the Budget and Policy Subcommittee was considering inviting department heads also to meetings further down the line this year. And so it might cause kind of like a conflict of how many people we're inviting to participate on different meetings. And so I think to your point about thinking to the future, Crawford, of like trying to come up with an approach that has a whole annual year crafted around these requests. So we don't wait 6 months until we're starting to invite people to.
Amen. Well, so then maybe what we do, Ozzy, you and Nicole and Justin, let's get together. Hey, what we want is a strategic plan, is
Yeah.
what you're saying. There's one thing to do. Yeah, we got this task, that task. What's our strategic plan? And maybe you say, this is our plan for next year.
Right.
And maybe we're working on that. Oh, yeah, okay.
Definitely.
All right then. Any other next steps? Let's go around again, next steps. Board members, staff.
I'm connecting with Monique about a storage system.
Excellent. Yes.
Actually, can I
Oh, yeah.
mention that and Monique, you could fill in where I may have gotten it incorrect. So we have, we did hear you guys. And so we did check in with our IT folks here because we were thinking of it two ways. Not only a repository for you guys that'll be helpful for your participation on CAB, but then also in the event that you have new applicants who are asking the same question or being recruited, you're going to them and say, hey, join CAB. And they're like, okay, but what is it y'all really do? Where can they, what site can they go to pull that information as well? So we do have a CAB web page on our county website. We're trying to think through the best way to create sort of like a file folder or what have you. But our IT folks said, just make it simple and just create a Google Drive. So we'll certainly do that for you guys so you can have access to it more readily available and it doesn't complicate things. And then we'll still work through how to put all of those documents also, those that are pretty final, on our CAB webpage, so that way the members of the public have access to it as well. And so maybe what you could help us with, Justin, is what you think would be which documents you feel would be most useful for CAB, especially as new members coming on board, because you're right, we will give you a ton of information. Even the packets for the retreat, it's a lot. And I often request that folks refer back to it whenever certain, because at the moment you're just getting started. And so the information isn't settling yet, but then as you get going, then the questions come to you, like, where do I get, or how do I do that? That information is there for you so you can refer back to. But there may be other pieces that we hadn't thought about that you could kind of help us.
And I think for me, it's like, instead of searching through a 200-page document,
Sure.
it's like clicking through a couple layers of folders.
Yeah, yeah,
Is a little bit more consumable for me.
got it.
But yeah, open to suggestions and going for it.
Cool.
I was just gonna say, just in terms of that particular question, to me, that seems a little more OCBC related in terms of documents that want members
Okay.
have. And so in turn, I was wondering if you were thinking through kind of like the filing folder system or like
Yeah.
what actually goes in the documents, right? And so I think we heard a lot of feedback from the survey about that. And so maybe that's something that OCBC can do in terms of surveying board members and trying to like find out more specifically, because I think we have our idea through the onboarding and going through that retreat, kind of all the things, but then we could come up with some kind of a template as to what could be included and then share it back out for whatever file storage system.
So I might recruit both of you, if that's okay. Only because I also know you're looking for specific documents that are really the policy, policy and budget related, right? So when I'm getting ready to advocate for a certain recommendation or for on a certain policy issue, how have we approached this in the past? What has been stated before? What has been the funding trends before? Those specific pieces, which is obviously helpful for your work, right? But then there's other larger, bigger questions that newer members might have, and they need access to some information that we may actually have, but maybe we're not filing it or anyway. So I will lean on you guys to kind of help. We'll take an initial stab at it, and then maybe bring you both in to kind of help us see whether or not this is making sense and would be easy for folks to adapt to. Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, now we're heading to adjourning. Any other comments prior to adjourning? Going around, let's make sure. All right then. As a reminder, each of you, all of us, are providing a valuable service to this vulnerable group. That is the returning population. And please remember that we're only as good as those of us that are around this table. And we want to maybe thank you, Patrice, and Monique, what's your name, Monique? And, but seriously, we want to thank you for what you've been doing for us. And, we most appreciate it. And we're gonna push you now. And you're gonna push us.
I'm here for it.
And you're gonna push us.
Yeah.
But we want to make sure that we keep moving forward. And remember, I hate to say this, we've got about 3 more months before it's showtime with the ambassador program. So Evan and everybody else, get ready to buckle up. Because when that ambassador program comes, we think we've got things set up of the work we've done in previous years, et cetera. So again, thank you to everybody. We're moving in the right direction and we will adjourn until May the 11th.
Can I make one
yes.
extra comment here? Because I know we've run into this every single year, and I just want to caution everyone to, it's hard to plan year to year because a year goes by so quickly. So keep in mind that though you're on annual terms, you're here for a 3-year period. So as a body, think of it that way to give yourself some time, that you're building up toward certain accomplishments and achievements that will likely take the course of that 3-year period. So don't put so much pressure on yourself to like, oh my God, we've gone through half a year, we've not done anything. You know, it's a building toward, you know, and there have been items from previous CAPs that are still carrying over. CAP has been talking about restorative justice for a long time. We're just now getting to the place where now we are able to kind of bring something to fruition. So just to keep that in mind, so you can kind of give yourselves a breather, not feel pressured to try to accomplish something all in a year. Also doesn't mean don't do anything for a year, but but just to be thoughtful about that.
Thank you, Patrice. We're adjourned. Thank you. Right on time.
Yeah. I mean, you're exactly right, though. I was thinking more on like